Jeg heter Heine Johansen. Velkommen til Vinpodden. I samarbeid med Tysk vininformasjon lager vi en serie hvor vi tar for oss noen av de tyske vindruene. I hver episode snakker vi med en vinmaker som har et spesielt hjerte for sin drue. Denne episoden så har turen kommet til Pfalz. Vi snakker med Domninik Sona. Han er vinmaker hos Koehler Ruprecht, og vi tar for oss weissburgunder. Welcome so much, Domninik.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to ask you, first of all, you're situated in Germany, but where in Germany are you?
We are located in the Pfalz area, which is the southwestern parts of Germany. It's bordering Alsace, the Alsatian French border, and the Alsace area, as well as the Rhine River. Across from the Rhine River is the Baden area, and north of Pfalz is the Rheinhessen area. And it's about, if you look at the map, Frankfurt is about 1 hour north of where we are at, and Strasbourg in Alsace is about an hour 30, good hour 30 south of where we are at. It is the second largest wine growing area in Germany, with about 20,000 hectares. It's in the Rhine Valley. It's not the romantic Rhine Valley, it's not the Mittelrhine Valley, it is more like the Rhine Plains. From the forest to the Rhine, it's about 20-25 kilometers flat, almost flat, a little bit of rolling hills. On the other side, on the Baden side, it's almost the same amount of kilometers to another mountain range. So it's a valley of about 40 kilometers.
And you work for the company Koehler Ruprecht. I know This is a historical winemaker. Would you tell us a little bit about the story of the house?
We are in the little village called Kallstadt in the northern Pfalz, and the Weingut Koehler Ruprecht is around for a little longer than the two of us. It's the oldest part of the building is from 1595. That's an old cellar, and the main building is from 1732. And the winery is very famous for the dry wines we make, and for the style of wines we make. We still make everything in wooden barrels, and everything is still Prädikats wine, and we don't, we use the wild ferments. We use the yeast from the vineyards to ferment the wines, and we give the wine usually a little bit of a longer time until we bottle them. So the like 9 months in barrel, almost like a human being, until we bottle the wines, and that makes us a little bit unique, just because we never jumped on the fashion train. We've always, for the last 100 years, we did not change the philosophy and the winemaking styles, and that makes us a little bit special. Yes.
And I know that makes you a bit special as well, because after the war, then the winemaking, it took a sort of commercial turn in Germany, but Koehler Ruprecht stayed on that line of just making quality wine for the 50s and until now, really.
Exactly. I mean, there were trends where there was times when there was sometimes a little bit more sweet wine made than dry wine, but it's always been the same philosophy, always been the same style. There's never been a change, which is sometimes somewhat unique, and a little bit special in all meanings. Yeah. Just because it's been the philosophy, and it's been hardcore fans to it too, just because it's never changed its style, which is for a cultural product very unique.
And of course you make some of the best Rieslings of Germany, and you also have some other grapes, and I want to talk to you today about the weissburgunder, or the Pinot Blanc. Would you tell us a bit about your weissburgunder, how you make it, and what makes it special?
Yeah, next to Riesling, we grow a fair amount of Weissburgunder, Pinot Blanc in English or French, but we call it Weissburgunder usually, or weissburgunder. It's a variety related to Spätburgunder or Grauburgunder. It's the DNA, funny enough, is the same. It's just the grapes are greenish, yellowish, and it's it is basically our second most important variety next to Riesling. We only make one Weissburgunder, a Kabinett Trocken, a dry Kabinett, and it is fermented like every other wine in the winery in the bigger wooden barrels, 2,500 liter barrels, 1,600 liter barrels, and 1,200 liter barrels. Selected picking, usually it's on the skin for about one night to give a little bit more flavor, because most of the flavors are in the skin, and then we press it and drain it into the barrels, and then we let it ferment until usually the next summer, or let it in the barrel until the next summer. Fermentation can go a little bit faster depending on the temperatures and on the vintages. Weissburgunder itself, the wine is not as racy as Riesling, not as acidic as Riesling. It is a little bit more, a little bit more of a mellow wine. It's not as, it has a really nice balance of acidity and structure. So you can pair it to a lot of different foods, just because it's so adapted to so many other things. It has a little bit more elegance, also a little bit more creaminess. It's a good mix of a good mix of Riesling, Grauburgunder, and with a little bit of fruit, even some like melon fruits as well. What you sometimes find in exotic varieties, you can also find that in the Weissburgunder. So it's a very universal variety, if you want to put it this way.
Talking about pairing it with food, what kind of food do you like to eat when you drink the Weissburgunder?
Just because it goes with so many things, but it is said that you shouldn't pair a wine with asparagus, with a white asparagus, but I kind of still like the Weissburgunder with a white asparagus. White asparagus is so strong that it usually, it's stronger than the wine, but I still, with a white sauce hollandaise and potatoes, and then whether you have it with schnitzel or with ham, it goes with everything. I think with the Kabeljau, it's another good pairing with a little bit of a meatier fish, and also some vegetables to it. I think that's good pairing for those wines. Not too meaty and not necessarily deer or wild animals. I would rather go with white meat. Also a good chicken, roasted chicken is pairing well with the Weissburgunder. I think pretty good. Yeah.
When you talk about asparagus, the white asparagus now, you make me really sad that I won't be able to come down for the asparagus season and have the famous German Spargel.
Yeah.
Is it? I know we talked about. We had a podcast episode together on the Wine World podcast about a year ago, and then you talked about some of the international varieties and how it was difficult to plant, for instance, Syrah. But Weissburgunder, first of all, is it indigenous to Germany, or is it imported?
It is. Well, people say different things. Just because it's Burgunder with it, which is Burgundy in English. So you would think it comes from Burgundy, as well as like Pinot. The Pinot varietals come from Burgundy, but there's not much Weissburgunder in Burgundy. There's a little bit of Weissburgunder in Champagne. We know that, and Austria. It's basically in the except Alsace and Champagne, mainly in the German-speaking parts of the world, so Austria, Alto Adige, Switzerland. They, from what I know or what I learned in school, the Pinot varietals have their origin in the Lake Constance area, the Bodensee area. So I would say it is native to the, not necessarily Pfalz, but to the region. If you wanna put it this way, it's not coming from southern France or probably from southern Italy or from the Georgia or somewhere. I would rather say, from what I know, it is a very local variety. And this is not talking about Weissburgunder, this is talking about Grauburgunder, which is also known as Ruländer. And it's called Ruländer in my area just because Mr. Ruland, who was the cellar master of the Bishop of Speyer, which is a town on the Rhine River just half an hour away from us, he was the first one who recognized, he was not the first one who recognized that it's a different color. Grauburgunder is a little bit a different color, a pink color in comparison to Weissburgunder, but he was the first one who made a selective picking and made a selective fermentation a couple hundred years ago. So I would say if there's a Grauburgunder back in those days, there has to be a Weissburgunder back in those days as well. So it's probably, I don't know, maybe even older than Riesling or same age as Riesling, but it's as local as Riesling, if you want to put it this way. It's just not as famous, but that's just, Riesling is more diverse. I think that's what it is. Weissburgunder is I think if you're a little bit into the music, Riesling is more like the first violin, and Weissburgunder is the bratsche. You know what I mean?
Yes, it's the same in Norwegian as well.
Violin. And so it's very similar, but not the same.
and working with Weissburgunder in the vineyard, is it easier or more difficult to work with than Riesling?
With the climate change, it is easier to grow it, but you need to watch out with the picking time, just because it's getting the sugar to get in the grapes to get the alcohol later on is moving pretty quick in the last couple of years in September, August and September. So you need to be a little bit more careful than in the 1990s. And you need to be a little bit more careful than we are with Riesling. That is the tricky part. But other than that, it's not really complicated to grow it. Maybe also because it's local to it's home to Pfalz, and it's not. It knows its terroirs and it knows its climate. So it's not a variety like Cabernet Sauvignon and Pfalz where you would have to work really hard to get good results. It's a little bit easier with Weissburgunder, I would say, yeah.
And how is the interest for Weissburgunder? Is it a curiosity for people, or is there like a real market for the wine?
There's a real market. If I tell you that it is our biggest single bottling, we have more Riesling, like I said, but we only have this one Weissburgunder. But it's our biggest bottling over the year. It's also not the most expensive wine as well, but there's a real demand for it, and people like to have it just because they still think Riesling is a little bit higher in acidity, so they prefer the Weissburgunder, which is a little bit more calm, a little bit more mellow, like I said, and it's also a very good wine for the restaurants, and they buy it and have it as a by the glass option. So if someone wants a glass of white wine, they usually go for a glass of Weissburgunder. So there's a real market. It's not a show, and it's not a trend again. It's been there and it will stay there.
Yeah, nice. It says Kabinett Trocken on the label, and for those not speaking German, it means that it's a Kabinett wine, but it's still dry.
Exactly. I mean, like that is part of our tradition from our winery, where we still make everything Prädikatswein, and which guarantees you as a customer that this wine is not chaptalized, so we don't add sugar from the bag to get more alcohol, so we only use the sugar from the grapes. And we put the word Prädikatswein on there, and Kabinett is the first Prädikat. So we have to put one of the Prädikats on the label, and this is the Kabinett. And the word trocken is dry. So there can be sweet cabinets, but this is only a dry cabinet. So it's a dry wine, not bone dry, about 4 to 5 grams. So it's in the medium range of dry. Yeah.
I'm hoping that as many people as possible here in Norway get to taste your weissburgunder Kabinett Trocken as well. This was Domninik Sona from Koehler Ruprecht. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Koehler Ruprecht weissburgunder Kabinett Trocken 2018 er en vin som imponerte meg litt. Vinen lukter av kornaks, av hvit fersken, hvite blomster, honningmelon og litt grønne urter. Den smaker mye av den samme, og så har han en medium mot medium pluss syre. Den er mediumfylde, og den er tørr. Og så har han en ganske sånn imponerende lengde som smaker av litt steinaktige toner og litt saltaktige toner, og som fremdeles gir noen av de her dype fruktsmakene som vi kjenner igjen av aromatikken fra nesen på. Og alt i alt så er dette en helt super pakke til krabbe eller sjøkreps eller noen av de her sommerlige fiskerettene i den perioden som vi er på vei inn i.